Salute everybody. Welcome to Switching Lane with Miss Parker. Miss Parker. Shout out to the riders and all my subscribers that hit that like button early. I really, truly, honestly appreciate you guys. And salute to my new member, Miss Sandra Doctor. Thank you so much for becoming a rider member. I appreciate that. Thank you again so much. Please don't forget to hit that like button as you come in or pass by. Turn on your notification bell and share the live. 1 second, let me turn this off. And share the live. Okay, I got to that one. Riders, also YouTube is offering an incentive of goals. So you can set it to 5, 10, 15, 20. And I set mine for 10. All donations are welcome. It's an incentive given to YouTube to content creators. And if you guys don't mind helping me reach my goal, all super stickers and super chats are welcome. Please say hello to your neighbor as you come in or pass by. And thanks in advance for that, riders. Make everyone feel comfortable. Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act, 1976. Allowances made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, scholarship, and research. Hey Lexi, hey Zilla, my sister, my riders, Miss LB, Miss Wish, yeah, you are, Mama Boo, Gina, Ross, salute. I have an announcement to make. I want to let everybody come in. How's your day going? I love you too, sister. I love you too. Um, so today, I wake up. I say, hey, I'm gonna go pamper myself. I'm gonna go pamper myself. I woke up refreshed, even though we was here till 5 o'clock in the morning. Even though we was here for that. Hey, Allison. Hey, Sam. Little did I know that a chain of events would take place with my riders. You know, stressing to another content creator to come check me out and what I talk about and stuff. And little did I know it was gonna rub people the wrong way that you guys mentioned my name. They said for me to tell you guys to stop pushing me on to people. Thank you, Sean, my sister, my rider. Thank you. Hey, Kimberly. And for whatever reason, it kind of threw me. And I did not ever start this channel to go back and forth with people to, you know, say, hey, I don't like her and things like that. Because I really I don't have time for it. I really don't have negative. I don't have nothing negative against people except for monsters and predators and people that do things like sex trafficking. Hey, Sharon, welcome. Alicia, welcome. Thank you, Sister Kimberly. Thank you, Sean, again. Thank you, my riders. And I didn't even know what happened today. I like I said, I was out and about, and I was, thinking I was doing something good for me today. Paying my bills and pampering myself because I've saved up to say at least get your hair done. I mean your nails done. I ain't been able to get my hair done, but let me get my nails done at least, and go chill out. Relax, get my mind off of all the negative energy, and I don't know what to think about this. I'm really over it and stuff like that. So I want to tell my riders and just don't say my name. Please don't mention me. To me it's not a big deal, and I'm not coming down on y'all. I hope y'all don't take it that way. But please don't everybody's not gonna be for me. Everybody's not gonna like me for whatever reason. I don't know these people on my dead mother. I've never met a lot of these content creators in my real time that's coming about some of these cases. Everybody's new to me. I never had beef with that content creator. I don't know them, but again, just please, just don't mention. It's sad that I have to say this, but please just don't mention me in another chat, please. It's just rubbing people the wrong way, and I woke up on the right side of the bed, but I'm getting the ass end of the stick, and it's unfortunate. And stuff, and it's coming into my real life. And when it starts hitting in my real life, it's like, come on, like I can't win for losing over here and stuff. Everybody wants their flowers. Me personally, I don't want none. As long as I get on here and do what I need to do and talk about these issues that's happening in our communities with you guys, that's all it means to me, and that's all it is for me. Is getting these stories out here and bringing awareness to these cases and things like that. Hey, Bye, my love. Lexi, the moderators, some of my mods just felt the need to, engage and just, tell another content creator that, I talk about certain issues and stuff like that. But it rubbed people the wrong way, and they said, y'all was pushing, my moderators was pushing me onto other people and tell them to stop. And it bothered me for a bit. It still bothers me. Like, damn, okay. Because I told you guys before, thank you. Have you seen us podcast for gifting a membership? I never mentioned because I know how sensitive people are these days. Yes, thank you. Have you seen us podcast? I appreciate you. Hey, Nika. Yeah, people are sensitive, Gina, unfortunately, and stuff like that. And what bothers me doesn't mean it doesn't bother someone else. Give me a second, guys. Y'all say hello to each other down there and give me a second. Hold on, guys. Come. Who you guys? I had to turn the air on. It was hot in here. Do you hear me? Hot in here. Hey, Belinda. Miss Parker thicker than a Snicker. So yeah, um, let's just be mindful and y'all go where y'all want to go. Go where y'all want to go. I can't tell y'all where to go, but I gotta stay over here. I keep saying it, and I have been over here. Truth be told, hey Portia. Truth be told, I have been over here in my yard, and hey Kristen, Portia, my sister. Whew, y'all running up the steps like that. But yeah, just be mindful where you go, and I get y'all was doing the right thing, or y'all felt the need to, put my name out there, but please, for whatever reason, don't mention me in another chat. I had a good day up until I got home from getting my nails done. Really. Now I'm back. I'm back a little regrouped, not refreshed, but regrouped. Hey, no cap. And thank you. Have you seen us podcast? Thank you. Thank you. So yeah, just be mindful of that. And please, I don't care what it is. Just don't mention my name in another chat. And I appreciate each and every one of y'all for being, you know what I'm saying, wanting to push my name out there and stuff. But in this business of YouTube, I've learned that everybody can shine but you. Certain people want the limelight, and how dare y'all take it from me? When it's my time to shine, it's my time to shine. Again, everybody's not going to be like me in this game. Can we see them nails, Miss Parker? I ain't getting nothing done really, Lexi. Just a different design on my nails. That's it. Got them short so I can do some things and stuff like that. Cause I can't even button my shirt sometime. When it got me a little outfit and stuff, a little cheap outfit at that. Got me some little accessories and stuff. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna present myself, take my Miss Pearly rollers out, and enjoy myself today. But I didn't know it was gonna be short lived. Okay. It is hot. Hey Chevy, hey. So I hope everybody's had a blessed day. Thank you to Kim and Have You Seen Us podcast? I appreciate the donations. Thank you so much. I really do. Thank you. Thank you, Portia, my sister Marada. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Um, and to the Rock Squad. If you have a ranch and you are Rock Squad, you are free to move around. I have to make this announcement. You are free to move around, do what you want to do. But with my riders, please, again, be mindful. If you are a Rock Squad member and you just feel the need that you have to pick a side or anything, and it gets that deep to where it might get crazy on this app. It's okay that I take your ranch and you just be a sub. You get what I'm saying? Because I'm getting to that point where it's almost like I'm not gonna be able to go a lot of places because we're moving the goalposts on our focus on why we really are here to picking sides. You know what I'm saying? And I don't want to go there. I'm not even there in that level. I'm so over the drama. I'm so over the negative energy. I'm so over let people get their flowers. Don't say my name. And and if that's what it leads up to, just respectfully, please just don't say my name. When y'all come over, I'm gonna give y'all the content and I'm gonna log off and stuff like that. So it makes me not even want. This is the type of thing that makes me not want to go live. Everybody wants to have the limelight on them. Everybody is here for clicks and views, and I don't know what happened to the love of everything, the passion of everything. But we've definitely taken it out, and it's nothing but hatred, and I don't like it. I don't like it. I never came here to push hate or nothing. And that's all honesty. I'm a lover at heart, So all of this negativity that's being brought to my subscribers and me is crazy, and I don't want no parts. So, again, just let's just be mindful of where we go and stuff like that. And you know, Chevy, me too, me too, me too. She said, "F them, bet they're in the bushes waiting for your content." She said, understood. Thank you, Zilla. Thank you. She said, yes, ma'am. I know, y'all. I know, I know. I learned that the hard way. The creator called me out by name. I was embarrassed and I felt so bad. Wow, Kristen. And it shouldn't even, and y'all real quick, before I get into this commentary to give y'all a little bit more to come in, but it shouldn't even be like that. It shouldn't even be like that. Why everybody can't be loved? Why do you get to be loved and I can't? You know what I'm saying? How dare they say your name? How dare they push you off on that girl like that? I was like, what? I didn't even know what happened. I am clueless still to what happened. I didn't go look or anything. I was just like, okay. I felt like the air got knocked out of me. And I was like, okay. And it was more to it, but I would never bring that here to y'all. I just want to say I appreciate you guys. And I thought we was all building together, but unfortunately, my house is again my house, and you know, I understand that it's understood, it's respected. So I'm only just subscribed to you and Shane. Thank you, Zilla. I appreciate that, Allison. Well, I'm Team Miss Parker. Thank you, thank you. Hey, Hey, Candy. Hey, Kenyatta. What's going on? Going on now. Oh, I got another announcement. Miss Wish, my sister, my baby, my love, Colton. I know, Chevy. I know. Don't say that, y'all, too much. Don't say Team Miss Parker. Don't. I don't want y'all. You know what I'm saying? To get banned from anywhere else. Don't start that. You know what I'm saying? Because I know after I even made this announcement that I was told to make. You know. Um, I was told to make this announcement. I was like, what? I never mentioned you in other chats. I'm sorry you're going through this. It's okay, Lexi. It's okay. It's okay, Team Miss Parker. Yeah. It's funny how they want you to promote them, but nobody can speak on who they enjoy. That's where we at, Ross. She said, demonic spirits, please. I am. I am. It should be collaborative and not competitive. That's what I thought we was doing, Gina. But again, we're not there yet. Some people are just not there. People seem to always one up on someone. We all have to live in the same world. Yeah, Miss Parker, you know that I love you. I love you too. I love you too. I love you to pieces. You always send us to others. What's the problem? You guys can go other places. Just they just don't want my name mentioned. They just said you guys was pushing me on people, and I was like, okay. And it was just too much, and I was like, okay. And I get that everybody's not me, and that's got to be understood. Everybody ain't a Desperate Sacrifices. Everybody ain't a Miss Wish. Everybody ain't a Tamala, and I gotta understand that everybody don't want to see everybody win on this app, and everybody don't like me. Everybody not gonna like me for whether they know me or not. they're not gonna like you. You know what I'm saying? Only good love and good vibes, yes. So we gotta recognize that everybody's not gonna like you for whatever reason. They're gonna like another content creator, and you're just not their cup of tea. And I respect it. You know, I don't have no hard feelings about stuff like that. You know, and things. So I just want y'all to know that about me too. I am the devil's been shooketh. Okay, me either. This is why I don't comment on everyone's stuff. I love everyone. Shank Rock, stop. All I know is you're still shining beautiful. You're doing. Let me hide this guy. Shh. That's how they're gonna act. I'm gonna unsub. I need the room and host demeanor. Okay, you fight for the forgotten one. Kimberly, I did nothing wrong. You know. Hey, Dougie Lee, salute. Happy Thursday, protect your peace. Happy Thursday. Thank you. Let's get into this. You know, you most definitely need to read what I sent. This is crazy. Okay, I will. I definitely will. Thanks, you guys, again for coming through. I appreciate you guys. Let's get to this. This is Miss Belinda was telling me about, you know, we was talking about trafficking. We're talking about the kids that's missing and things like that. You know, we had the Naziah Harris case come up, missing 13-year-old girl, the circumstances behind her being missing and things, and also 13-year-old Kamani Lateef missing only to come up unalived. And you know, she said, okay, I'm about to go get pissed and get in both y'all asses for it. Don't let nobody here come between y'all. Don't give them the satisfaction. Keep it off here. It's okay. Try, look, Belinda, I want to get to the content. Belinda, it's okay. I'm okay. You give good content. Why they mad? Um, Allison will never understand everybody. Okay. Thank you so much. Protect your peace. Thank you. Hey, so Steve, thank you. Hey, how are you? And thank you, family. Please share the live out. Yeah, share this live out. If you have a community, or if you're a content creator, please share this live out. It's just adamant that we make these stories go viral because I never heard of this. But Belinda was like, once we talked about it, she's like, she said it a few lives that you guys gotta go see, look at the Franklin scandal. And I was like, what is it? You know what I'm saying? What's so deep? And I could even listen to like a minute of it, and instantly I was like, oh my God, what is this? And Lateef and Sean B also was like, hey, look at this story. Zen even said, look at this story, check this out. So stories just started resonating with stuff that happens in our community. And it was just like, damn, why is this so, you know, why is this going on? Why is this happening? And is this still happening to where um we don't know where our missing kids are going? This is what's happening to our missing Black children. We hear a lot of stories, and every time I turn around, somebody's like, why don't they talk about the missing Black kids? Why do our stories go unheard? And this story was so captivating to me that I was like, I gotta do a live about this. I'm gonna do a live about this to bring awareness, to bring knowledge and history that they try to take from us. The history that they're erasing, so we'll never know these stories. So we won't look into when our children go missing. We won't say, has it 10,000 children in the state missing? It's impossible that one person is taking 10,000 children. But this story tells a lot about how that can happen when you do the statistics in your community. How many people the other day when Lateef said, check out the missing children? How many people went and checked in their communities to see how many missing children there was in their communities? Anybody? Did anybody do any statistics on how many missing kids it is in your community? I think Tanya came in here and told us yesterday. She said, Zilla said, I did. How many was missing in your community, Zilla? She said, no, not yet. Raw, yeah, I want each one of y'all to check and let me know. Because I think tonight when we do it, she said 558. Wow. Wow, Zilla, that's a lot. 558 missing. And it doesn't always just be children that's missing. Our college children, our adult children, going to work, never to be seen again. She said, I did. I did. It was 7K. My God, Candy. 7K. 558. Lexi, how many was it in yours? And can't nobody tell me we're not dealing with this. There is no way possible nobody is telling me that we are not dealing with the Franklin conspiracy. How do we keep, she said 424 in Virginia. How is that possible? How are these numbers possible? 500 in Richmond, Virginia. Look at these numbers. We don't want that to be one of ours. But if we don't bring awareness to these stories, we won't make change, educate each other on what to look for in our communities. Red flags and people walking up and down the street that you don't know that live in your communities. Thank you, Chevy. Thank you. People walking up and down the street that you don't know. Being mindful to watch around your community, to see familiar faces. Staying to yourself. We cannot stay to ourselves anymore to keep our community safe. 48,000 in my God, my God. And have you seen us podcast, you guys? Somebody drop her link, please. Sissy Bet, will you drop her link? Sissy Bet is good at dropping links, and I appreciate her so much. She works hard down there. Making sure she drops your link, even if you're not a content creator, she drops your link. We all subscribe to you, okay? Have you seen us podcast advocates for missing children? Her nephew was missing and still hasn't been found, and she talks about him and other children all around the world on a daily on her podcast. Allison said 3,074 children in New York. Hey, Pam. Franklin happened in my home, Omaha, Nebraska. Glad I'm no longer there. And that's what Belinda said too, Jennifer. She said it happened in her community and stuff like that. And I know you're glad you're no longer there. Have you seen us podcast, sis? Right here. Where'd she go? This, her right here, sis. No Cap said 3,103 so far this year. That's sad. Look at these numbers, y'all. I am in one of the largest trafficking hubs in my town. Right above your name, sis. Have you seen us podcast? Wow. And you're in Texas, correct, sis? Thank you, sister. She said we have 6,546 children ages 3 to 19. Look at those statistics, guys. Ages 3 to 19. 6,546. Well, Miss Parker, how's y'all Thursday? Hey, Miss Jackson, it's good. She said 14 in my zip code. Isn't that scary? Y'all know how many times I go to Walmart by myself, just getting household items and things like that. Might need something, but I leave and go get my things by myself, not knowing if it's a predator around lurking or if it's a van. What vehicles do we look at? Are we mindful of our surroundings going into a store? Entire New York City, including New York State, New York City. She said 12,623 children were reported missing to police across the state. And that's in a year. 12,620. My nephew is missing from Humble, Texas. Andre J. Moulton Jr. 10/18/19. We have no leads. Mm, mm. And I just read that about London. I was telling you guys about the young lady, 12 years old, London, and her family said, "Hey, Lovey Loving Books, hey," and she said, they said their 12-year-old daughter is missing or trafficked. No longer are we seeing children missing; we're seeing that children are trafficked. Miss LB said 173 in Maryland. 566 across the state of Mississippi, with 499 found and remaining deceased. Mm, 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 mm. Salute, Josh. Salute. The first clip before we get into the Franklin conspiracy, this clip was sent to me also by um, Sister Belinda. And I want to play this for you guys because we talk about the Naziah Harris case, and so many people, subs come from Detroit, and it was like, you won't believe all the sex trafficking hubs. You won't believe all the stories and things like that. In North Carolina alone, I noticed several just in the last few weeks. Me too, and I'm in North Carolina, Lovey, as well, so I understand. And y'all welcome Josh. Make sure y'all go subscribe. Josh, they said your Sunday services are a banger. I missed it and I hate that I did, but they said they was refreshed. I got a phone call about one of your Sunday services. So salute to you, my brother. Keep doing your thing. He said I hit 50 subscribers. Good, Colton. Good. Good job. Ours hasn't been updated since 2022. I wonder why that is, Tribal Levi. I wonder who you can contact to see if you can get that updated. See if you can get in contact with somebody to update that ASAP, sis. Colton, congrats. Keep off. It'll pay off. Miss Parker, I just left the doctor, and as soon as I get home, I got a news alert that someone has graped on yesterday in the same block that I was in today. She said reported 1,571 as of 2020, state of Nebraska. Most of them are ages 14. Pay attention to that age, Lovey. Stay on that age. When somebody, Latif was talking about the age, and he was like, if you have children, be mindful of when you let them go outside to stay around them and stuff like that. It's okay. She said, join Josh loving the Sunday services. Okay. He said, thank you. I'm glad to see you going and keep going. Thank you, Josh. Thank you. Sweet Honey said 23 in Philadelphia and over 347 in Pennsylvania just this year. And they are all in the same age groups, 12, 17-year-old boys and girls. That is something to pay attention to. It's a pattern. And Sweet Honey, I'm glad you said that because I definitely ran into someone on Instagram and they were saying, put your phones down. They said, put your phones down and worry about what's going on in someone's life and get into where are these missing children up in Philly and Pennsylvania area. She was adamant. She put out a big statement and it spoke volumes. She said, put down those phones and worry about reality TV, worrying about what's happening in someone else's life when we have over this amount of children, and it's a lot. It was a lot, and she didn't just show names, she showed pictures. Hey everyone, I'm from Omaha, born and raised, and this was right in the hood, literally walking distance from our house. The credit union was walking distance from school, daycares, candy stores, etc. That's what they said. That's what they said. Louisiana ages are 3 to 19 is the ages. Scary. 3 to 19, you guys. Lexi just gave her numbers. They're all sounding the same, correct? I'm trying to Google it and I can't find them out. Just how much crime cost. Interesting to see this being discussed so many years after this happened. Yeah, salute to Belinda for bringing awareness to this story and want me to discuss it. But I want to go to Detroit. She shared this clip with me and it stood out so much. Hey, Brother Nazir, because, like I said, we talk about Naziah Harris. We had Zion Foster and things like that. And even though those Zion Foster has never been found, we got a conviction for hers, but Naziah still hasn't been found, and so many others. She said in the U.S. it is 460,000 total missing kids.
have to work.
This is the story of Detroit Hospital's human trafficking hub.
A city of 670,000 people, where some say it's possible to simply disappear. Between 2015 and 2016, three people vanished without a trace. Their stories share a disturbing pattern that has left investigators and families searching for answers. They all checked into Detroit hospitals. They were all officially discharged, and then they vanished. When we see patterns like this, we have to look at every possibility.
Y'all
Were
hear
these
that?
random disappearances, or was something more organized that
I like how Nikki came down here and said something about patterns. Pay attention to the patterns. And y'all heard what he just said, the patterns.
played? A 32-year-old woman who arrived by bus, gone. A 39-year-old man who checked himself out, disappeared. A 23-year-old mother who never called her daughter again, vanished. Some have speculated about organized criminal activity. Others point to the dark web and black market operations. But without bodies or evidence, investigators can only theorize. Tonight, we examine the evidence, follow the timeline, and ask the question that haunts many families. What happened at these hospitals, and why did three people disappear? Hello, strangers. Welcome back to the Strange Bar and Grill. I'm your host, JP. Today I'll be discussing the case of three individuals that disappeared under strikingly similar circumstances, all after being released from local hospitals in Detroit. Is it all just a coincidence? Or is there something more sinister going on in Detroit? On August 13th, 2015, 32-year-old Kayla Gray arrived in Detroit by Greyhound bus from Kansas City, Missouri. What happened next would mark the beginning of a perplexing mystery. Shortly after arriving at the bus station, emergency services transported Kayla to a Detroit hospital. The circumstances that led to this EMS call remain unclear. After being treated, she was released and then vanished without a trace. There is no record of
Praying for you, Christian. Okay, baby. We hope your electric gets back on soon and preserve your battery, love. You stay safe out there, okay?
which hospital she received medical care. Also, her background information is unknown. All we know is that she was treated and released the same day, and she never returned. Kayla stood 5 feet 6 inches tall and weighed approximately 100 pounds at the time of her disappearance. Despite extensive searches, no confirmed sightings have been reported since that August day. I searched everywhere for information about this case, but I couldn't find any information relating to this case. All I know is that this woman is missing. I couldn't find any information on this woman's family either. There's no known surveillance footage of Kayla leaving the hospital, but someone had to report her missing, right? But who? This case only goes back to the year 2015. That's the year she went missing. So you would expect some sort of digital footprint, but none exists. There's no news segments with family pleading for help, but she exists on all the missing person sites. It's almost like this person was scrubbed from the internet, or maybe this person never existed, or maybe that's what they want you to think.
How do you just go to the hospital, never to be seen from or heard again? She said 5,304 in my county. In her county. See, in cities, inside of cities, it's counties. 5,304 in my county. Raw County, not to say what state is this. Oh wow.
Less than a year later, on March 14th, 2016, another disappearance would echo Kayla's case. Jamel Jawan Jones, age 39, checked himself out of Sinai Grace Hospital. Like Kayla, he would never be seen again. And that's it. He went missing in 2016. I looked everywhere for information on Jamel Jones, and there's no records of him online, no social media accounts, no family pleading to find him, no news reports, absolutely nothing. Just another face in the National Missing and Unidentified Persons System, or NAMIS for short. But someone had to report him missing, though. But who? Clearly, someone knew of him and his whereabouts before he went missing. But why is there zero existence of Jamel online? Why is there no surveillance footage of Jamel leaving the hospital? It almost appears he was scrubbed from the internet as well. But why? Jamel was 5'6" and weighed about 200 pounds when he disappeared. In September of 2016, a third case would add to this troubling pattern. 20
Why wasn't that question? I see my loved one going in the hospital, but all these cameras and I never see my loved one coming out. She said total in my county is over 9,000 people. I read it about Sinai Grace Hospital. I never go there. The hospital is no good at all. I call it the unalive hospital. Wow. People don't just come up missing. It's devils out here busy assisting.
Three-year-old Brandy Brown was involved in a car accident that led to her hospitalization at Sinai Grace. After her discharge, witnesses placed her near 7 Mile and Forrare Street, just 2 miles from the hospital. According to family members, Brandy was having personal problems prior to her disappearance, and they felt she was hanging out with the wrong crowd. Despite this, Brandy's family does not believe that Brandy would abandon her young daughter, nor do they believe that she is out of touch by her own free will. Her grandmother later told Fox 2 News, "For her to be missing all this time, she was very close to me. She always called me and said, 'Would you fix me some chicken and dressing and macaroni and cheese?' She didn't do it at the holiday, and then her daughter had a birthday, and she didn't call her daughter, and she always called her daughter on her birthday." Now, as I mentioned previously, Brandy disappeared sometime after being released from Sinai Grace Hospital after she was treated and discharged for injuries she received in a car accident. I was unable to find the exact discharge date or the extent of her injuries. Brandy was last seen at 7 Mile Road and Forrare Street, which is on the west side of Detroit and appears to be about 2 miles from the hospital. Once again, I couldn't find any details about who saw her or how she left the hospital. Did she walk, call a cab, or was she picked up by someone? Did someone know she was leaving the hospital? At the time Brandy disappeared, she was living on the 18,000 block of Schaefer Highway. Her grandmother still drives by the house and follows leads herself, often driving from place to place. Brandy's family says it's unlike her to not contact her family, especially her 4-year-old daughter at the time, Alicia. Brandy never called Alicia on her birthday, which her grandmother says is definitely uncharacteristic of her. Brandy's dad, Mario Brown, said he has walked up and down the streets of Detroit hanging posters of his missing daughter for months. Jasmine Little, Brandy's sister, said,
"Neglecting the family, neglecting her child, that's not her. So something has happened, but I just don't know what it is."
Little girl now lives out of state with her dad and continues to ask about her mom.
What am I supposed to tell my niece? I don't know what to tell her. Your mom just dropped off the face of the earth. It's not just about her missing, it's about somebody else who's missing.
The longer that I get, the worse should I feel. I'm still looking, I ain't gonna stop.
One other interesting thing to note is that Fox News went to Brandy's neighborhood and showed a man who has lived in the neighborhood for years Brandy's picture. He said her face just does not look familiar at all, and that struck me as very odd. So what happened to Brandy? Did she possibly suffer an unnoticed head injury from the accident that led to her going missing? Was she a victim of circumstance? Did she leave on her own accord? It's hard for me to form a theory when the details of her disappearance are just so vague. I wish I knew the time frame between when she was discharged from the hospital and when she was last seen. Was it hours, days, or more? I truly hope Brandy is found so her family can get some kind of answer. At the very least, her daughter will one day need to know what happened to her mother. Crime Stoppers of Michigan is offering a $2,500 reward, so hopefully someone will come forward. Brandy is 5'4" and weighs approximately 120 pounds. She has a distinctive tattoo reading Alicia, the name of her daughter, on her right shoulder blade. Unfortunately, that's all the information I have surrounding these mysterious missing persons cases. With that, let's discuss some possible theories about what may have happened, because something bizarre is definitely happening to these Detroit patients. Now, these three cases, spanning just over a year, share striking similarities. All three individuals were patients at Detroit hospitals. They vanished shortly after being released. Two disappearances occurred after treatment at Sinai Grace Hospital. None have been seen or heard from since. So they have three disappearances, two hospitals, 1 year. The theories behind these vanishings range from tragic accidents to something more sinister. Theory number one deals with the possibility of some sort of mental health crisis. In 2015, Detroit's mental health system was overwhelmed and underfunded. For vulnerable individuals like our three missing persons, this could have proved fatal. So considering the evidence that we do know, Kayla Gray, she was found distressed at a bus station in an unfamiliar city. Jamela Jones checked himself into the hospital. Both were possibly experiencing mental health crisis. Both potentially discharged into a system without adequate support. Could that have led them to either get lost or harm themselves in some type of way? Could Brandy Brown have been suffering from a brain injury after a car accident, causing her to be confused after her release? Could that have led to her disappearance? The gaps in the Detroit mental health system during this period were significant. Someone in crisis could easily become disoriented, especially in an unfamiliar city. But three cases this similar? That's when we have to look deeper. Which leads me to my next theory, theory number two. Were the hospitals involved in some sort of organized crime? Two victims disappeared from the same hospital. All three vanished within months of each other. This doesn't seem like a random chance. This looks like a pattern. What makes these cases unique is the connection to hospitals. These are secure facilities with surveillance and staff. To operate here, you need inside knowledge. You need to know the systems, the blind spots, the procedures. The most disturbing questions center on the hospitals themselves. Where is the surveillance footage? Why were vulnerable patients released without support? And why did two disappearances occur at Sinai Grace Hospital? Did they actually leave the hospital? Did they die in the hospital? And if they died in the hospital, then why the cover-up? That question would lead me to believe that the hospitals were involved in something illegal, whether harvesting organs and potentially selling them on the black market. That sounds kind of far-fetched until you realize stuff like that happens all the time. Hell, there was even a funeral home that was selling body parts in the black market, right? There's sick people out there and they'll do anything for a buck. You take an individual who doesn't appear to have that support system, someone that they deem as a throwaway, unimportant, and instantly they can become a candidate for whatever dark, twisted events that you have in store for them. And then you just chalk them up as to another missing person that no one cares about, and then scrub any record of them from existence, and then you just move on with your normal operations. It sounds crazy, but it does happen. Because in facilities this secure, people don't just vanish. Someone had to know discharge protocols, the security patterns, the camera locations. The question is, was it an inside job? Or was someone watching from the outside? Which brings me to my next theory, theory number three, human trafficking. Detroit's location makes it vulnerable to trafficking operations. Its proximity to the Canadian border creates opportunities for international criminal networks. Hospitals provide the perfect hunting grounds, legitimate facilities where vulnerable individuals can be identified and tracked. Could someone have been waiting for these patients to exit the hospital and snatch them up? What do you think? And now my last theory, theory number four, would be the perfect storm. So all of these different events kind of occurring together in some form, because sometimes the simplest answer isn't always the right one. These cases could involve multiple factors: vulnerable victims, systemic failures, and criminal opportunism, all converging at these hospitals. Unfortunately, with so little information available on these cases, will we ever actually find answers? Since these disappearances, Detroit hospitals have reportedly updated their security and discharge protocols. But for 3 families, these changes came too late. The truth behind these disappearances may lie somewhere between these theories, but one fact remains undisputed. 3 people walked out of Detroit hospitals and vanished without a trace. But what do you think?
I love y'all theories. She said they never have to explain anything to a family because they make it seem like they left. If you take my blood, and this is good, how many of us do it? She said, if you take my blood, I want to see every test you ran with it because you're not matching me to nobody. Y'all ever seen that in the hospital? I'm glad you said that, right? Because, and I like all y'all comments because it makes sense. I'm like I'm like all of y'all. I agree with every one of y'all. How do 3 people come in the hospital never to be seen of or heard again, but never ever in a video camera leaving the hospital that they had on camera footage walking into? Why are y'all taking 8 barrels of blood from me in the hospital? Why so many? Y'all ain't never seen it and said, why so many things of blood? Why? Get that itch removed off your license, y'all. They can't take anything you haven't given permission. And how many people do they do it? How many people do they do it to? We seen the faulty funeral home yesterday that had no recollection of the people checking in or out. But yet they received ashes. Absolutely, Lexi. Hey, Natalie. The doctor, staff, and security are terrible. I left up out of there with concussion, stumbling right past the security guard with not a word, are you okay? Well, I'd never return again. And is this at the Sinai Hospital? No cap. She said, I always do. Yes. Start getting those. That's educational. I want to know what every test. Y'all notice they never tell you why they're taking so many barrels of blood, but yet you're like, what's that for? Oh, that's crazy. Make sure to ask questions. Be your own advocate. I've worked in the medical field since I started working. Trust me, they are evil in ways. She said, yes. She said, wow, I know, Kim. Depends on the test. Certain tests require a bio independently in the amount needed for the analyzer. And that's good to know, Chevy, but let me know what it is. Let me know what it is. A lot. I have been an RN for 10 years, and the things I've seen and heard about is sick. And salute to my nurses. Removing your limbs and all. Have they told you what they do to them? She said, I'm scared. Don't even put it in here, sis. Don't put it in here. So thank you to Belinda again for sharing this with me. And also, let's get started on this Franklin conspiracy. For those that don't know this story, the satanic trafficking cult America forgot. How did America forget? Or was it another, story that the government swept under the rug, hoping we never find out this story? Only those who lived there and was told about this story. Let's get to it.
Shadows of Omaha, Nebraska. In the shadows of Omaha, Nebraska, there lurked monstrosities the world had yet to fathom. It was the quintessential Midwestern town, yet beneath the serenity, a malignant darkness festered. It was here that a vile scandal of systemic sexual abuse and satanic worship unfolded within the very institutions that were meant to protect the city from itself. In the mid-1980s, the Franklin Community Federal Credit Union served the most disenfranchised and underprivileged communities of Omaha. It operated under the guidance of Lawrence E. King Jr. He was a socialite, friends with those who were in positions of power, politicians and police who found themselves indebted to his favor. King sat on the boards of charitable organizations and seemed to give back to his community. But beneath this crafted exterior pulsed a darkness accused of some of the worst crimes imaginable. Investigators initiated an audit of the credit union, uncovering malicious and grotesque deceit. King was charged with 40 counts of embezzlement, fraud, and tax evasion, stealing over $39 million. Yet, the startling revelation of his financial crimes would only be the beginning. The investigation uncovered a horrifying narrative, stitched together by the testimonies of children. They named King as the architect of nightmares like ritualized abuse, cultist ceremonies, and a web of political blackmail that implicated figures like Ronald Reagan and George Bush Sr. They described a sinister underbelly of cruelty and corruption, the aftermath of which still echoes through the nation. The story of the Franklin Community Federal Credit Union begs a profoundly unsettling question. What if the very institutions meant to protect become the architecture of unimaginable horror? The Franklin Community Federal Credit Union was established in 1968 with the intention of making credit accessible to the African American community of North Omaha. It was a low-income credit union formed by community activists. It was a cornerstone of communal support, and it attracted deposits from charities, nonprofit organizations, and struggling individuals. The credit union offered certificates of deposit to non-members, and they provided financial services and education for residents, even helping when they couldn't cover their water or power bills. Lawrence E. King Jr. would become the manager in 1970, just 2 years after its establishment. Under his direction, the Franklin Credit Union expanded its services, like the initiative with the Consumer Service Organization, which managed welfare, disability, and Social Security checks. This expansion allowed a significant addition to the coffers of the Franklin Credit Union. King began offering high-interest certificates of deposit. They marked at 2 to 3% above market rates in an attempt to secure greater deposits at the credit union, and it was instrumental to the growth of the institution. However, it quickly became a Ponzi scheme, where additional CDs were required to cover payments for maturing ones. These rates attracted investments and grants from corporate powerhouses and religious organizations, securing millions for the credit union. King leveraged these perceived successes to network with the movers and shakers of Omaha, and later, the national political arena. King started as a McGovern Democrat, but he changed his affiliation and became the chairperson of the National Black Republican Council. He was tasked with coordinating efforts to mobilize the black vote across 17 states, a role that placed him at the confluence of national politics and community outreach. King was a rising star of the GOP. He sang the Star-Spangled Banner at a Republican event in 1982 that was attended by President Reagan, and he sang the national anthem in 1988 at the RNC in New Orleans. Throughout the 80s, King became increasingly embedded in the Republican Party at the state and national level. His position with the Franklin Credit Union afforded him an annual salary of $16,000 a year, but King drove a $70,000 white Mercedes, chartered private jets and limousines, and rented multiple apartments and houses in Washington, D.C. and Omaha. He explained that his wealth came from old family money. The truth was much more sinister. King was exploiting his position at the credit union to fund his extravagant and debaucherous lifestyle. The Franklin Credit Union provided King with an inexhaustible bankroll. He expanded into multiple business ventures, owning restaurants and bars, including Omaha's Shake Lounge, which would be frequented by pimps and sex workers. He began to donate heavily to Boys Town, a large orphanage in western Omaha started in 1917 as a shelter for young boys left behind with no family after World War I. In the 1990s, it was worth $500 million. The organization had expanded to owning its own school and church, where over 500 homeless and abandoned children were housed. Still, it was considered the richest square mile in the world. King also joined the board of directors for the Omaha Girls Club. He began to funnel vulnerable children from both organizations into his home, businesses, and parties under the guise of empowerment and employment. These children would allege realities far more horrifying than anyone could have anticipated. Before the shutdown of the Franklin Credit Union in November 1988, before the senatorial investigation and public unraveling, a complex web of disturbing rumors began to surface. These early whispers were first shared with law enforcement officers, social workers, and foster care administrators, hinting at a deeply entrenched network of sexual exploitation, abuse, and even satanic ritual, all implicating the city's most prominent figures. These initial reports,
Not just satanic rituals, guys. Satanic rituals. Just thinking of it. And you guys make sure y'all subscribe to Cupcake. I dropped her link right here. So, pour into her what y'all pour into me, okay? Satanic rituals. What? The credit union was in the corner of 34 Decatur, 1 block from my house, 33rd in Franklin. She said Boys Town is a weird place. So I heard, Cupcake. So I heard.
were sporadic and often dismissed or downplayed by those in positions of authority. But as more victims came forward, the horrifying scope of these allegations could no longer be ignored. On June 10, 1985, a social worker with the Nebraska Department of Social Services received a call from the Sheriff's Department in Washington County. Records indicate the call was about child abuse complaints under the foster care of Jarrett and Barbara Webb. Jarrett was a board member of the Franklin Credit Union, and Barbara was Lawrence King's cousin. The call detailed 3 foster children who had significant bodily injuries. The children complained of abuse from their foster parents. They claimed that they had been beaten with a railroad iron and belt. The Webbs fostered 9 children, and more than half had run away from home in the past. During later investigations, DSS would remove several siblings from the home after reports from 6 of the children that they had been stripped nude and beaten for extended periods of time, and they had been denied meals. Unfortunately, the abuse didn't stop there. One victim, Lisa Webb, told Jane Tooley of the Sheriff's Department that she had been sexually abused since the age of 9. The Washington County prosecutor, Patrick Tripp, didn't believe Lisa's testimony. He required that she take 4 separate polygraph tests. She passed all 4 times, but Tripp attempted to discredit her, claiming that her story was too fantastical to be real. Tragically, this pattern of skepticism and disbelief would be a trend among investigators and prosecutors. Other children in the Webb home claimed to have found graphic images and videotapes, some portraying underage victims. They reported hearing that these materials had been produced and provided by Lawrence King. Julie Walters, a youth care worker at Boys Town, developed an extensive 51-page report based on interviews with Nellie and Kimberly Webb. She had extensive experience working with children who had suffered abuse, and she emphasized that the Webb children seemed truthful. Their narratives shared a remarkable level of detail, thematic consistency, and implicated figures, only enhancing their credibility. Nellie Webb reported that King would attend parties at the Omaha Girls Club, or he would throw parties at his home. King would call the Webbs and tell them to provide one or more children who would be forced to attend. She claimed the parties were attended by 30 adult patrons seeking the company of sex workers and children who were commingled. They would pay money, and the encounters would happen in communal areas, side rooms, or bedrooms. Horrifyingly, Nellie spoke about King flying her to Chicago, New York, and Washington, D.C., where she met significant political players, including Vice President George Bush Sr. She described that these parties had countless bodyguards, admission key cards, and pat-down security. And behind closed doors, she saw powerful politicians engaged with young male sex workers. The Walters Report was given to the Department of Social Services in 1986, but there seemed to be little, if any, investigative interest. Barbara and Jarrett Webb lost their foster license, but they were not subject to any criminal charges for the abuses perpetrated. Separately, a 17-year-old girl and her mother filed a report with the Omaha Police Department after participating in an illicit photography session. The photographer, Rusty Nelson, approached the 17-year-old to be his subject for a European portfolio he was developing. The girl and her mother followed Nelson to his apartment for a 5-hour session where Nelson made inappropriate remarks and attempted to convince the girl to pose nude. The girl's mother noticed several nude photographs in the studio. Many of the subjects appeared to be minors.
Let's talk about it for a second. How does a session turn into a 5-hour session? Thank you, Portia, my sister. Thank you, Portia. Appreciate you. Welcome, Elaine. I see you, love. Sinriza, thank you for coming through. Appreciate you for coming through. Welcome. She said, sound like a Diddy party. She said, wow, OMG, this stuff has been happening. So I've heard, Cupcake, and it's disturbing. She said, key cards and locks. What is going on? What's wrong with these people? And the fact that, once I looked around, when did you notice the nude pictures and stuff? That would have raised the red flags for me automatically to be like, no. So,
Officer Carmian interviewed the two women about the exploitation attempts of Rusty Nelson. They claimed that Nelson spoke of being self-employed, but regularly spoke of someone he called the boss. Investigators arrived at his apartment, and they found it had been vacated just 9 days after the initial report. The lease for Unit 3B in the Twin Towers apartment complex was registered under the name Lawrence King. When the FBI spoke with King, he said he had evicted Nelson when he heard about the incident. Officers discovered that King rented several units in the Twin Towers complex, including the penthouse, and an interview with the building manager revealed rumors that King was a heavy drug dealer with a preference for young boys. Nelson would later contend that King used his deep bankroll to make the investigation go away. Nelson would not be indicted on these charges, and he would disappear for several years before making critical contributions to the investigation in 1990.
This is what Ivy League universities you can get into with a 3.6 GPA.
In 1988, Officer Carmian was dispatched to interview Shawnetta Moore, a 15-year-old girl whose testimony involved the same themes, players, and patterns of abuse, pointing again to a broad exploitation network within the city of Omaha. Moore was located at Richard Young Hospital, where she had told her therapist that she was the victim of nude photography and suffered at the hands of powerful men committing satanic rituals. Moore reported that she was friends with Kimberly and Nellie Webb, and that it began when all three of them were earning money by modeling for an unnamed photographer who was likely Rusty Nelson. Moore claimed that many of those photographing and purchasing photographs were leaders of the North Omaha Girls Club. She claimed she was coerced with threats of violence and that she reported the photography network to law enforcement and the superintendent of her school, Deward Finch. Finch was mentioned in previous testimony as a friend and frequent visitor of the Webbs, and nothing came from her criminal report. Moore reported that she was gradually introduced to ritualistic parties where kids were drugged. She described graphic and indecent acts performed by men at these parties, and she identified Lawrence King by name. She claimed that many of these ritualistic parties occurred at a home owned by King on Wirt Street. The investigating officer drove to the area and saw King's name printed on the awning of the home. The officer's report indicated that Moore seemed reluctant to trust, especially when King's name was mentioned, and it wasn't until later in 1988 that she was completely forthcoming. Her disturbing testimony about satanic ritual and abuse was later collected and entered into the Franklin Committee's senatorial investigation and report. Shawnetta Moore's testimony included descriptions of the homicides of several children, and she named King as a leading participant. She attended parties that were identical to the testimonies of the Webbs. She remembered votive candles scattered around the room, men cloaked in long robes, and descriptions of the rituals as power meetings. Smith recounted that she was locked in a room with a Caucasian infant and told that she could achieve great power by killing something that she really loved. The men decapitated the infant and removed the eyes before leaving the room. Smith stayed in the room overnight and described hearing whippings and beatings in the building. She was released the next day and told to return for the next power meeting.
I wouldn't know what to do, guys. I sacrificing. And we hear about it so much in the industry. And I've always believed it. I never not believed it. But to hear it with the Franklin conspiracy is just giving me chills. I'm baffled. I'm blown right now.
In fear for her life, she complied, and she saw the superintendent of her school and Lawrence King in attendance. She described 5 other instances of ritualistic sacrifice, the details of which are more graphic than those already cited and included prolonged acts of dismemberment and cannibalism. Officer Carmian took these initial reports and told doctors at the Richard Young Hospital that he would return for more information. However, he never did. Carol Stitt later recounted to the Franklin Committee that caseworkers, employees, and therapists called Carmian, requesting that he return because Smith was still sharing new accounts. Senator Ernie Chambers would uncover that Carmian had been transferred out of investigations. Chambers would recall, "I felt he'd been transferred because he was getting too close to something, and his superiors did not want him to continue." Some questioned Moore's credibility. She had been hospitalized and suffered severe psychological trauma, and law enforcement reported that she had a history of bizarre interactions with officers. However, the Foster Care Review Board Executive Director, Carol Stitt, believed her testimony was highly credible. The chronology and the details were concrete, and they overlapped in detail with the Webbs, all of whom implicated Lawrence King. But this was only the beginning. Carol Stitt believed that the Omaha Police Department was failing to investigate thoroughly, or had even resorted to intimidating and discrediting witnesses. They seemed determined to make these stories go away. But still, the reports continued to grow in number. In May 1988, Kirsten Hallberg, an employee at Richard Young Hospital, reported 7 additional witnesses who had similarly horrifying and disturbing accounts connecting back to Lawrence King. Accounts that would soon be made public. Whispers about financial mismanagement at the Franklin Community Federal Credit Union continued throughout the 1980s. In 1981, an anonymous letter was sent to the National Credit Union Association about misdeeds, and a limited investigation uncovered $400,000 in missing funds. In 1984, Edward Hobbs wrote a letter to the Franklin Board detailing embezzlement at the credit union. He was a former teller at the bank and he was fired the day after sharing his letter. From 1984 to 1988, the Franklin Community Federal Credit Union escaped watchdog audits from federal organizations. King and several of his employees delayed and excused these potential audits to cover up their theft. But in 1988, the National Credit Union Association closed Franklin for unsafe and unsound practices, and a forensic financial accounting was conducted. 1 week later, they announced that millions of dollars of high-interest certificates of deposit had been hidden from federal examiners in the past.
So do y'all believe that in statements said this definitely is crazy, and I've watched and seen things. My dad was just talking about people making deals with the devil. Okay, Colton. Do y'all believe that the money that they was putting into the credit union was paying for organs and to buy these children and certain things? Because I believe so.
The total was $4 million in assets and liabilities and $30 million in missing funds. The total would later be raised to $39 million. On November 18th, 1988, the state legislature demanded an investigation of the Franklin closure. The Franklin Committee was formed to investigate the neglect and financial mismanagement of the credit union, but the scope of their investigation would become much larger. The Franklin Committee was run by State Senator Loren Schmidt and State Senator Ernie Chambers. Both senators faced significant political headwinds, credibility concerns, and even dissension through the lifespan of the committee. But they were dedicated to the pursuit of truth and justice. On December 12, 1988, Senator Ernie Chambers received allegations of physical and sexual child abuse related to the Franklin Credit Union. The source of these allegations was never named. The senatorial committee was only beginning to uncover a malignant nightmare, the scope of which they had yet to imagine. On December 19th, Carol Stitt, Dennis Carlos, and Burrell Williams of the Foster Care Review Board recounted the allegations of abuse to the Franklin Committee. The first investigator hired was Jerry Lowe, a former Lincoln policeman, and by July 1989, he had gathered a great deal of secondhand evidence, including witness testimony and some financial records indicating the Omaha police chief had spent time with King at his Washington, D.C. residence. However, without substantial evidence, Senator Schmidt worried the case would fall apart. Senator Ernie Chambers and investigator Lowe resigned. By August, the Franklin Committee hired Gary Kerdori, a former state patrolman, and with his assignment, the case took an even darker turn. Gary Kerdori made public appeals for information, calling for victims to come forward. He networked with disgruntled social workers and advocates to identify potential victims who were hesitant to come forward. Despite the resistance and skepticism of law enforcement, he made connections with Omaha police officers and agents who reported on abuse. This holistic approach, combined with previous evidence, allowed Kerdori to find and identify victims who were willing to go on the record. 4 victims allowed their testimony to be video and audio recorded. They were Alicia Owen, Troy Boner, Danny King, and Paul Bonacci. Kerdori and his assistant Karen Ormiston interviewed 21-year-old Alicia Owen at the Women's Reformatory in York, Nebraska. Owen was reluctant to involve herself initially, but on November 7, 1989, she told Kerdori that she had become involved with Lawrence King in August 1983, when she was just 14 years old. Troy Boner and another boy from Boys Town had invited her to a party at King's penthouse in the Twin Towers complex, just a few floors away from where photographer Rusty Nelson had been investigated. She identified prominent businessmen like Alan Baer and Harold Anderson, and the police chief, Robert Wadman. The following accounts are deeply disturbing. While her first party was in August, Owen attended multiple parties at the Twin Tower penthouse. They had fewer than 10 adults, with nearly twice as many minors, reportedly around the ages of 14 or 15. The same men were often in attendance. These parties were well stocked with drugs and alcohol, and the room featured a television set which played pornography. Owen remembered seeing many boys in varying states of dress. The boys would often be sitting in the laps of men. Attendees would retreat to back bedrooms, or other times, the abuse would occur in the main room, in front of others. Owen described being assaulted by Police Chief Wadman on multiple occasions. During her taped recounting, she would request moments to stop and regain her composure. She claimed that Wadman is likely the father of her child. Owen confirmed what many of the other testimonies had already stated. She recounted private flights with King to Los Angeles, where she was victimized by violent men. This story would be corroborated by another witness interviewed by Kerdori. When asked about satanic activity, Owen described a house in Leavenworth where a pentagram was painted on the kitchen floor. The home was filled with demonic pictures, and she mentioned a man named King's Horses, who frequently attended the parties and oversaw King's dirty work. She claimed that King's Horses was deeply involved in occult ritual. Rusty Nelson and Lawrence King directed photography sessions at many of these parties, and Owen was forced to participate or receive physical beatings. She speculated that Nelson kept the negatives of these sessions to blackmail King. With the resulting testimony from his first witness, Kerdori would recommend 62 individuals and documents to be subpoenaed, and he provided a list of alleged perpetrators, including Lawrence King, Police Chief Wadman, Harold Anderson, Alan Baer, Superintendent Deward Finch, Peter Citrone, and Judge Theodore Carlson.
Look at those names real quick. Lawrence King, Robert Wadman, Harold Anderson, Alan Baer, Deward Finch, Peter Citrone, but this one right here, Judge Theodore Carlson. Judge Theodore Carlson. Whew. Police, the ones that's supposed to protect. Judge, a judge who sentences people for things like this. Sounds like a Diddy party. The very person that should have been protecting the darn the darn police chief. I just don't see being turned on by children. And the sixth part about it is you have men attending this. This is why people don't trust them now.
Kerdori was directed by Owen to speak with Troy Boner. He visited Troy's mother, who described him as a boy with a great weight on his shoulder, who was unwilling to share. On November 25th at 4 a.m., Troy called Kerdori, and the two spoke for an hour. Troy seemed paranoid, interrogating Kerdori on his intentions and affiliation with law enforcement. When Troy began to share that he had been abused and deeply scarred by what happened, Kerdori insisted that they not discuss it over the phone, and the two agreed to meet the following day. Kerdori videotaped the conversation with his second witness on November 25th, 1989. Troy corroborated much of Owen's testimony, although some dates did not match. He confirmed that he had witnessed Police Chief Wadman assault Owen, and he named many of the same locations that Owen had mentioned. Troy explained that it began when he met Alan Baer in 1983. Another boy had taken him to an apartment on the second floor of the Twin Towers complex and introduced him to Baer, where he was abused and paid several $100s per meeting. Baer gave a picture of Troy to Lawrence King, and King approached him at the Max Bar, a prominent bar in the gay community. King paid Troy for similar abuses, and King moved Troy into a Travelodge Inn for 3 weeks, where the two met almost every afternoon. Troy would eventually be moved to an apartment owned by King, where he and other minors were frequently abused. In May 1985, Troy recruited another minor, Danny King, and introduced him to Baer just as he had been introduced. Troy, Danny, and Owen would frequently be flown on private charter planes or directed to take commercial flights to California, where they met with sadistic pedophiles. Troy claimed that some minors were not on return flights, and he assumed they had been sold or killed. With Troy's videotaped testimony, Senator Schmidt and Kerdori were fearful about how to proceed, given that the institutions of power in Omaha were directly implicated. Danny King was employed, but in the process of being evicted when Kerdori met him. Kerdori and Troy picked up King from his apartment, where he gathered his things. Kerdori filmed the interview with his third witness at a residence inn on December 5th, 1989. Danny confirmed that he met Baer through Troy's introduction in 1983. He was 13 or 14 years old at the time. The two drank schnapps, and Danny accepted abuse for a payment of $50, and this continued every week for 7 months until Danny was introduced to Lawrence King. The three would do drugs at Baer's residence, and Danny would be beaten and unpaid if he didn't perform certain acts to King's liking. The videotaped interview of Danny King ran nearly 6 hours, and in the days following, Kerdori drove him through Omaha to confirm several of the named locations, including the apartment of Alan Baer. The 21 hours of testimony from Owen, Troy, and Danny corroborated multiple events, locations, and people in their separate accounts, and they were confirmed by testimony from other witnesses who refused to go on record. The footage was submitted to the Nebraska Attorney General's office and the U.S. Attorney on December 27, 1989. While this was a necessary step in escalating the accusations of corruption, child abuse, and Satanism, Kerdori worried about the welfare of his witnesses, given the history of corruption. He housed his witnesses and supplied them with food and goods. He advocated that they receive physical and psychiatric care, and he worried about harassment, similar to what the Webbs and Owen had already suffered. At the same time, Senator Schmidt and his attorney, John DeCamp, spoke with an agent at the FBI field office in Omaha to discuss law enforcement's inaction in previous investigations. They implicated prominent figures and shared that Police Chief Wadman had been named as an alleged perpetrator. The agent told Schmidt and DeCamp that he was close friends with Wadman and that the committee would receive the full and direct scrutiny of the FBI if they chose to implicate him. As a result, DeCamp turned to the press, releasing a memo that publicly named many of those mentioned in the videotaped testimony. The shockwaves of this memo reached throughout newspapers and television networks in Nebraska and neighboring states. A blurb was even written in Newsweek magazine. Omaha reporters and officials were quick to discredit DeCamp. The Lincoln Journal and World Herald only printed excerpts, stripping the names of those implicated. DeCamp and others posited that the editorial decisions were influenced by Peter Citrone and Harold Anderson. Citrone was a prominent newspaper columnist who wrote for the World Herald, and Anderson was the former publisher of the World Herald. Both were implicated in the child abuse allegations. On March 1st, 1990, the FBI debriefed Danny King, who began to recant what he told Kerdori on videotape. They conducted multiple-hour debriefings, and his story remained unchanged until March 5th. He claimed to have lied about the interstate flights, but he reiterated the abuse by Bear and King. Danny King blamed Troy Boner for the fabricated stories.
See, that's when the elites get to them. That's when the higher ups, that's why he tried to keep them in housing together, to keep them from being cohorts, to change their story, to change the narrative of what really happened at the Franklin Institute. The Franklin Credit Union. How did a credit union turn so sick? How did a credit union turn to satanic harvesting? Kids on drugs, kids recruiting other children. Kids unalive, kids essayed, time after time again. Mm-mm.
He claimed that Troy was looking to sue King for millions, and the orchestration of the testimony was meant to ensure their victory in the judicial system. By the end of March, Danny had recanted almost all of his testimony, including the repeated abuses of Bear and King. The FBI followed by debriefing Troy Boner, who recanted much of his testimony as well. The DeCamp memo, the leaked videotaped testimony, and the recantation of Danny and Troy greatly wounded the investigation. DeCamp, Schmidt, and Kerdori believed the FBI had coerced the recantations. Kerdori met with Paul Bonacci on May 10, 1990, after getting his name from a member of the Concerned Parents Organization. Bonacci was in the Lincoln Correctional Center for 2 charges of sexual assault on a child. The victims were 13 and 9 years old.
Wow.
Bonacci was evaluated by a court-appointed psychiatrist and diagnosed with what was formerly known as multiple personality disorder, but what is now known as dissociative identity disorder. The disorder, while controversial in diagnostics, often presents in disorganized victims who suffer repeated and severe abuse as a child. Bonacci was born in Omaha, the second youngest of 6. He came from a broken home with a second and then third stepfather. He suffered neglect, and a predatory neighbor began abusing him at the age of 6. When he was 9 or 10, Bonacci became involved with drugs and sex work, loitering in a nearby park frequented by pedophiles. This quickly matured into parties where he encountered 18 and 9 years old. Bonacci was evaluated by a court-appointed psychiatrist and diagnosed with what was formerly known as multiple personality disorder, but what is now known as dissociative identity disorder. The disorder, while controversial in diagnostics, often presents in disorganized victims who suffer repeated.
Y'all notice how the screen went black? Y'all notice how the screen went black? You can no longer see the picture. I was like, what happened? I wonder if I play it without you guys, if the pictures will come up. You know, especially because George Bush Sr. got away with it. The United Way came to my house. Why did they come to your house, Rising? They're all tied together. But we're going to continue listening, even though they don't want us to see.
And severe abuse as a child. Bonacci was
get back a little bit.
Camp. The Lincoln Journal and World Herald only printed excerpts, stripping the names of those implicated. DeCamp and others posited that the editorial decisions were influenced by Peter Citrone and Harold Anderson. Citrone was a prominent newspaper columnist who wrote for the World Herald, and Anderson was the former publisher of the World Herald. Both were implicated in the child abuse allegations. On March 1st, 1990, the FBI debriefed Danny King, who
Rising, can you come up? if I drop the link after this video, will you be able to come up? She said to interview me. They knew I was researching this and learning all the names and the people involved. Wow. Will you be able to come up in just a second?
Who began to recant what he told Kerdori on videotape. They conducted multiple-hour debriefings, and his story remained unchanged until March 5th. He claimed to have lied about the interstate flights, but he reiterated the abuse by Bear and King. Danny King blamed Troy Boner for the fabricated stories. He claimed that Troy was looking to sue King for millions, and the orchestration of the testimony was meant to ensure their victory in the judicial system. By the end of March, Danny had recanted almost all of his testimony, including the repeated abuses of Bear and King. The FBI followed by debriefing Troy Boner, who recanted much of his testimony as well. The DeCamp memo, the leaked videotaped testimony, and the recantation of Danny and Troy greatly wounded the investigation. DeCamp, Schmidt, and Kerdori believed the FBI had coerced the recantations. Kerdori met with Paul Bonacci on May 10, 1990, after getting his name from a member of the Concerned Parents Organization. Bonacci was in the Lincoln Correctional Center for 2 charges of sexual assault on a child. The victims were 13 and 9 years old. Bonacci was evaluated by a court-appointed psychiatrist and diagnosed with what was formerly known as multiple personality disorder, but what is now known as dissociative identity disorder. The disorder, while controversial in diagnostics, often presents in disorganized victims who suffer repeated and severe abuse as a child. Bonacci was born in Omaha, the second youngest of 6. He came from a broken home with a second and then third stepfather. He suffered neglect, and a predatory neighbor began abusing him at the age of 6. When he was 9 or 10, Bonacci became involved with drugs and sex work, loitering in a nearby park frequented by pedophiles. This quickly matured into parties where he encountered and embraced Satanism and large-scale exploitation. In the first 7 hours of videotaped interview, Bonacci confirmed he met Owen, Danny, and Troy in late 1983 at the Twin Towers apartments. He had already been abused by Citrone, Bear, and King. He described meeting Citrone at an amusement park, where he was solicited, and he described meeting Bear in 1979 in the Milk Run neighborhood. Bonacci was just 12 years old when he was abused by Bear and paid $20. He remembered that the encounters frequently included sadistic abuse, like beatings, cuttings, and burnings. Bonacci claims that his affiliation went on to include cross-country flights to California, D.C., and Des Moines, the same locations cited by the other witnesses. In one particularly brutal recounting, Bonacci claims a camera crew followed them to a remote area outside Sacramento. One of the boys was placed in a cage, and the other 2 were instructed to beat and abuse him. A particularly sadistic man joined the assault before shooting one of the boys with a handgun. The other 2 were instructed to continue their abuse afterwards. That night, Bonacci would unsuccessfully attempt suicide in the hotel bathroom, resulting in a 2-day stay in a California hospital. Bonacci confessed that he participated in the abduction of 12-year-old Johnny Gosch in Des Moines. It was the early morning of September 6, 1982, when Gosch vanished without a trace. The only remnants of his presence were a wagon with undelivered newspapers and his dog, left to wander the street alone. The search was immediate and widespread. Flyers were plastered on every surface, and the police were inundated with tips, entrenched in a case that defied explanation. The search quickly went cold. Months turned into years, and then in 1984, Johnny Gosch was one of the first missing children portrayed on a milk carton. This was an initiative to spark interest, drive public engagement, and unearth leads that might otherwise be lost. Bonacci recounted that men had forced him to kidnap Gosch. They threatened him with a pistol and instructed him to speak with the boy on the street long enough for one of the men to grab him. These men took Bonacci, Gosh, and another boy to a home near Omaha where their abuses were filmed. It was Bonacci's testimony that began to provide reason for the trips to Washington, D.C. He implied that King used children to blackmail politicians and other power brokers. The home in the area had been outfitted with security cameras to capture the illegal sexual activity. These tapes would be sold to other players to twist votes and force political capitulation. Bonacci claims that he was interviewed by the Omaha Police Department on several occasions. He even provided documentation of aggressors, including photographic evidence. However, nothing came from these investigations. Bonacci and Owen suggested that Kerdori pursue Rusty Nelson, who likely had a surplus of photographic negatives. They could secure physical evidence of their testimony. On July 9, 1990, Kerdori flew a 1984 single-engine Piper Saratoga from Lincoln to Chicago with his 8-year-old son. They were going to attend the MLB All-Star Game. Kerdori told his wife that he would be meeting Rusty Nelson while in Chicago. Kerdori made 4 phone calls while there, speaking with Lauren Schmidt, his wife, and 2 others. In one phone call, he stated that he would be acquiring photographs and other materials that would corroborate the testimony from his remaining 2 victims. Rusty Nelson would later confirm that he met with Kerdori in Chicago and provided him with photographic negatives that would be the linchpin in the Franklin case. The All-Star Game ended around 11:45 p.m., and the Kerdoris departed Chicago's Midway Airport at 1:51 a.m. An hour later, the plane crashed in a cornfield in Ashton, Illinois. Debris was scattered up to 1,800 feet from the fuselage, and an investigation determined that the plane had broken up mid-flight. 2 years later, it would be speculated that Kerdori may have become overtaken by fatigue. When attempting to desperately recover lost altitude, he had snapped the wings off the plane. The backpack and film camera of Kerdori's son were recovered nearly undamaged, yet Kerdori's briefcase was not. Those close to the case believe that if Kerdori had retrieved photographs, they would have been stored inside this briefcase. The following day, FBI agents, armed with a subpoena, arrived at Kerdori's office, requiring the surrender of all evidence related to the Franklin case, as well as any phone logs and financial documents related to Kerdori's investigations. Senator Schmidt feared that Kerdori's death was one more example of corruption and cover-up. The committee hired former CIA Director William Colby to investigate the plane crash. During his tenure with the CIA, Colby notably devoted outsized resources to Operation Phoenix, which sought to disrupt the political and social support system of the Viet Cong by infiltration, assassination, torture, and more. The program resulted in over 25,000 deaths, many of whom were civilian non-combatants. Colby later became outspoken about the CIA's practices, and he received tremendous political and social pressure to keep his secrets. Colby, familiar with the pressures of political conspiracy, warned DeCamp and Schmidt about the forces at play. Colby investigated Kerdori's plane crash and could not find evidence to indicate tampering with the plane. However, it's rumored that he told 3 members of the Franklin Committee that he believed Kerdori had been assassinated. Mysteriously, Colby would take a solo canoe trip near his Maryland home in 1996, and he would go missing, only to be recovered 9 days later. There were no witnesses, and the scene was not thoroughly investigated, as authorities believed it was a stroke or accidental drowning. His life jacket was missing from his shed, but it was not recovered with his belongings. The purpose of the Douglas County Grand Jury was to judicially review the Franklin-related child abuse allegations. The grand jury proceedings would be private, and they would make decisions on who to indict to stand trial as criminal defendants. The prosecutor began by calling witnesses, reviewing testimony, and sharing evidence with a jury of Nebraskan citizens. They began by reviewing the earlier allegations of the adopted Webb children, and they released an interim report that would be used to indict Jarrett Webb on third-degree sexual assault charges against his adopted daughter, Lisa. This interim report was released to ensure charges could be filed before the statute of limitations expired the possibility. The grand jury spent the majority of their time reviewing Kerdori's videotaped interviews. The witnesses themselves appeared before the grand jury, and Danny and Troy upheld their recantations. Their testimony was meant to discredit Owen and Bonacci. Troy claimed that Owen had called him and fed him the information contained in his 7-hour taped interview, and Danny echoed these claims during his short time on the stand. Owen spent 2 days testifying, and she was questioned about her history of psychiatric hospitalizations, drug use, financial fraud, and more. Bonacci testified, but his history of sexual offenses and psychiatric diagnosis greatly damaged his credibility. The Douglas County Grand Jury released its final report on July 23, 1990, less than 2 weeks after Kerdori's death. The subsequent publication of the World Herald read, "Grand Jury says abuse stories were a carefully crafted hoax." The report claimed that child abuse allegations related to King were nothing more than rumor. It claimed to have found no evidence of any children being transported on interstate flights, despite passenger manifests and pilot interviews missing from admitted evidence. The report concluded that Lawrence King had used money to solicit and procure men in their late teens and early 20s, which was considered adult pandering. King was not prosecuted because of the pending federal financial case that would result in his conviction. Instead, the jury indicted Alicia Owen on 8 counts of perjury, Paul Bonacci on 3 counts of perjury, and Alan Baer for 2 counts of adult pandering. In 1991, King was convicted of embezzling over $39 million from the Franklin Community Federal Credit Union. The court found him guilty of making fraudulent financial transactions and misappropriating funds, which led to the credit union's insolvency and subsequent federal takeover. King was sentenced to 15 years in prison, a judgment that aimed to hold him accountable for the financial damages his actions caused. In addition to his prison sentence, King was ordered to make restitution, although the prospect of recovering the embezzled funds was considered slim due to the scale of his theft and his depleted resources. The aftermath of the Franklin Committee's investigation and grand jury trial were as multifaceted and complex as the case itself. King's conviction brought a sense of legal resolution to the financial aspect, but left many in the community still grappling with the unresolved allegations of child abuse and exploitation. Some believed that justice had been done. They believed that the allegations of child abuse had come from compromised witnesses, the testimonies of children who had suffered difficult lives by any measure, compounded by drug use, sexual abuse, and more. They believed that these children had suffered greatly, but they had ultimately been confused or coached by investigators and social workers. Satanic panic was at its peak in the 1980s and 1990s. It was a period of heightened fear about demonic ritual abuse, and it had become public hysteria. In short, they believed that the stories were too salacious and sensational to be true. Others found the testimony of the videotaped witnesses to be compelling. They pointed to historical precedents for cover-up indicating that those in positions of power wielded undue influence to dismiss and discredit witnesses. They believed that law enforcement had been deliberately inept, and the system had not only failed to find justice, but actually contributed to the harm of the outspoken victims. In 1994, a British television company known as Yorkshire Television produced a documentary titled Conspiracy of Silence. The documentary was developed in cooperation with the Discovery Channel. It sought to publicize and explore the allegations of child abuse and exploitation surrounding the Franklin scandal. It was scheduled to air on Discovery, and the event was printed in the TV Guide for its debut time slot. At the last minute, the Discovery Channel unexpectedly pulled the documentary from the broadcast schedule shortly before its airing. While the official reason was not named, it's believed that legal and political pressures were responsible. The suppression of the documentary is one more talking point for those who believe the Franklin scandal was the result of a widespread cover-up. Additionally, there are 15 suspicious deaths connected to Franklin. Bill Baker was a restaurant owner in Omaha. Baker knew King and was a partner in his pornography operations. He was found shot in the back of the head. Sean Boner was the brother of Troy Boner. In 1991, Sean was just 20 years old when he was found with an accidental gunshot wound to the head. Investigators told reporters that Sean had fired the weapon himself. He was found slumped on the couch. Sheriff Pat Thomas claimed that it appeared Sean had been drinking and must have believed the gun was empty at the time. Aaron Owen, brother of Alicia Owen, was found hanging from a ventilator by a prison-issued bedsheet in 1990. He was serving a 4 to 7 year term for several charges, and he died in his cell just hours before one of Alicia Owen's court dates. Claire Howard was Alan Baer's former secretary. She had access to his schedule and personal information, revealing his attendance of King's parties and prior relationships with underage boys. She mysteriously died in her sleep in 1991.
Wow.
Several of King's former associates perished under suspicious circumstances. Dan Ryan was found suffocated in his vehicle. Charlie Rogers was shot with a shotgun, which was ruled a suicide. Joe Malek was found with a gunshot wound, which was also ruled a suicide. Curtis Tucker was thrown or jumped from the window of a Holiday Inn.
Wow.
Others, who were only tangentially related to the case, also had bizarre circumstances of death. Mike Lewis was a caregiver for Shawnetta Moore. He died of a severe diabetic reaction. Bill Skoleski was an Omaha police officer who had been conducting his own investigation into King, and he died of a cardiac event.
Wow.
Kathleen Sorensen had fostered Nellie and Kimberly Webb after they left the care of Jarrett and Barbara Webb. Sorensen died in October 1989 in a two-car collision just 2 miles east of Arlington, Nebraska. Sorensen collided with another vehicle when it crossed the center line and hit her head-on. Lastly, Harmon Tucker, who supervised vocational schools in the area, was reported missing on October 18, 1988. He was found on November 1st along a logging road 1,400 miles away from Omaha. Tucker was found by hunters with a .22 caliber gunshot wound to the head, just a few miles away from hunting grounds frequented by Harold Anderson. The circumstances surrounding these deaths forge an alarming pattern, and they underscore the chilling possibility that these were calculated acts. What truths were buried with the deaths of these individuals, and what truths were still waiting to be uncovered? In the years following the Franklin scandal, Paul Bonacci served his time for his convictions. He filed a federal suit against Lawrence King and won because King refused to appear in court. Bonacci was awarded a $1 million settlement, but it's unclear how much of this money, if any, was ever collected. In 1997, Noreen Gosh had survived a divorce and moved into an apartment on her own. It was 15 years after the disappearance of her son, Johnny Gosh, and she was trying to put the pieces of her life back together. She claims that two men appeared at her door in the middle of the night, and she recognized one of them as her son almost immediately, which was confirmed when he revealed an identifiable birthmark on his chest. Gosh traveled with another man who spoke very little. He didn't mention his living situation or the abuses he had suffered, but he did confirm much of Paul Bonacci's story about his abduction. They only spoke for a few hours before Gosh left, claiming that he was on the run from his abductors and he would not be safe until the perpetrators were brought to justice. Paul Bonacci is 57 years old now. He has a family of his own, and he still lives in Nebraska. He was briefly interviewed in 2023 about the aftermath of the Franklin scandal and the Gosh abduction. Bonacci confirmed Noreen's story. He claims that he has been visited by Gosh between 15 and 20 times, the last being in 2018. He stated that Gosh is afraid to come out of hiding, afraid that his name will be added to the list of suspicious deaths. As long as Gosh lives, so does a version of the truth. The aftermath of the Franklin scandal remains unresolved, a sorrowful litany of unanswered questions. Although King was convicted for embezzlement and conspiracy to defraud the United States, the deeper, more disturbing accusations of systemic sexual abuse, corruption, and ritualistic worship remain. The question of whether the truth was inherently hidden or deliberately obscured remains one of the Franklin scandal's most enduring mysteries. It is a haunting reflection about the nature of power and the potential for darkness. It's a chilling reminder that the very institutions designed to uncover the truth can sometimes seek to obscure it.
I'm gonna ask at this time that Rising comes up. I'm gonna drop the link, Rising. Positive, I agree. Um, I'm gonna look these names up and I'm gonna get into it. Yeah, thank you, Kimberly. No weapon formed against me shall prosper. I will make my enemies my footstool, and the devil can't touch God's anointed. Thank God he covers me. Rising, I dropped the link in the chat. I would like to talk to you for a second. Rising stated in the chat that she started investigating this and looking up names, and the census came to her home, and she said they did her friend wrong, and even told her friend that she was hacking into systems that she wasn't. And the fact that we listen to these names, Dan Ryan, Charlie Rogers, Mike Lewis, Bill Baker, Curtis Tucker, Aaron Owen, Andrew, Gary Kerdori, Andrew Kerdori, Claire Howard, William Colby, Sean Boner. Did y'all hear all the mysterious deaths? Oh, I got you, Rising.
Okay.
Hey, Rising, salute.
Hello, salute. Hey, Lala.
So, thank you for joining. Thank you for coming over. This is my first time having you as a guest. Welcome, first and foremost. What got you into wanting to look up the Franklin conspiracy?
Because what intrigued me first was Boys Town. I recognized Boys Town when I was younger, all the commercials, and we all knew that there was a white Larry King, but we didn't know that there was a black one. So what intrigued me was like, I didn't really know about black politicians. And that kind of, lured me in, but I didn't know that they was doing the sinister stuff that they was doing until I fell down that rabbit hole.
So when you got down that rabbit hole, What struck you about the commercials you seen about Boys Town?
Because it was like a Catholic guy, and this was before all the perverts came out of.
You went out Rising. Okay, you're back.
Tying the two together. Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Tying the two together, like, the SAs, and I mean, I'm not going to trust my kid with no Catholic people at all.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, once I got to researching it, United Way came to my house to interview me.
Wow.
And Stephen Coakley is the person who he passed away on 411. That's the information day. He's the one that let me know that United Way is like a spy program.
Mm-hmm.
You think United Way is like a helpful organization, and no, it's a spy program.
Wow. They
I,
said, when did you start your research?
this was back in 2006. Between 2006, 2007, 2008, and then 2009, it just started getting too weird. And I had to leave my friend alone because I felt like they were going to unalive her. Because we were researching this stuff together. And we came up with like such a long list of, there's so many people that they didn't even mention.
Wow. So you mentioned that you felt like they was gonna unalive your friend. What happened?
Well, they said that she hacked an army base, which she didn't. She started seeing a bunch of white Mercedes Benzes around her house, and they was watching her. And she had like a domestic violence with her husband to where she had to get brain surgery, but she had to get it up here. But they went in here and back here, and they had no business going back there.
Mm.
So she felt like they did that, and she wasn't the same. She wasn't the same when they finished that brain surgery. So she thinks everybody's in the Illuminati, and it just weirded me out about her. And I tried to, 10 years later, refriend her, but she wanted to research and do all this, and I'm scared for her life. I really am. And she's not the same.
My
And
friend
they
said,
come for you.
she said y'all was very deep sweep searching.
Yeah, we were. And like I said, if they can't get to you, they
You cut out Rising.
see. I said if they can't get to you, they're going to get to your children. So watch your children, because they have mine in the system, and this is the third birthday that he's in there, and that's not usual, typical, you know. The child, the CSB, Children's Protective Services, has changed a lot. It's more towards like a trafficking network now, because they've had him state to state, and it's not supposed to be like that.
And it's funny that you say that, because if y'all remember when Shank Rock did a demonstration, we've been talking about the Naziah Harris and the Kimani Latique story, and when we go deep down the rabbit hole, it starts getting into more of trafficking, things like that. When we hear about the kids missing and stuff, and he wanted everybody to compare the cases because he said there's no way how similar these cases are beginning to be, and now the Kimani Latique is taking a different turn of events, and I'm hearing more and more every day to more people and things like that involved, and we have Naziah Harris up in Detroit missing, and the thing about that is when you do the statistics of trafficking, Ohio and Michigan keep coming up so so much. And it led us to, let's talk about the Franklin conspiracy. My sister Belinda that asked me to ask you how long was your research was like, Miss Parker, you really gotta do the Franklin Credit Union and stuff. It is Kimberly. She says CPS needs a whole internal affairs investigation. They need to start prosecuting them. So you said 2009 it started getting crazy. So when you got that visit, what happened, Rising?
When I got the visit, probably about 2 days after, I felt them looking in my window, but I didn't see anybody, but I felt it.
Mm,
So I started to feel like they got me under some type of weird surveillance. They went after my brother. The CIA went to his house, and it was just like, kind of like letting me know, hey, I know where your people are, you know. And it just scared me, and I left it alone. And that's all they wanted was me to stop searching that stuff up.
wow.
And
And
I
one of my subscribers said she got to looking it up, and she said she just got to looking it up because today, and said she got a message saying, "Is this the first time you've looked up this case?" And she said the message just disappeared.
and I had a fear that they would try to say like I'm looking up some kitty stuff, and I didn't want that to happen to me because I wasn't, you
Mm,
know. So I just kind of bagged up. But Lord, the end of that when they was talking about that dude on the milk carton missing, like they had him dressing like a girl, and they had another one dressed like a girl, and it's just strange. I found out stuff from my own city, which is the same city that Kimani Latig died in. I'm from Toledo, Ohio. I'm in
mm,
Texas right now,
mm.
you know, and I don't know. I can't tie this for certain, but my mom just died of cancer, and she was really healthy. So I don't know, you know. You just have to kind of watch this stuff, you know. But a part of me does blame myself because, you know, if they can't get to you, they're going to try to get to your people. Just,
Wow.
just watch for craziness because it's out there, and it's insane to me.
And I'm so glad you put up and you discussed this because I said we turn a blind eye to things like this. It's always, oh, she's crazy. Oh, that's conspiracy. And we hear it in the music industry. I even remember telling my chat it was a Tom Cruise movie. And I remember him going into this beautiful neighborhood, this rich, beautiful neighborhood. And it was embarked with beautiful trees and I mean everything. But behind those trees was a home, a mansion. And when he went in there, they was doing sadistic Satanist things. It was women and men dancing with men and men, politicians and things like that, watching the young men lusting and cutting the hands, rituals going on. And they had to wear masks, the masquerade mask to come in. She said there's a ranch in Texas built in 83 connected to Boys Town.
She said, what?
There's a ranch in Texas built in 83 connected to Boys Town.
Do you see how weird that is? I
Wow.
had a friend of mine tell me that, and he wouldn't give me no details. I don't even know why he told me what he told me. But he said that he was taken to this remote place, and there was a little Asian boy there, and they were doing those weird things, and they gave him money twice, and they let him go. But he would not tell me where it was.
Wow.
So I believe this stuff goes on, but I don't know why he told me what he told me. Because, I was going to, you know what I'm saying? The little Asian boy there, like, it's disgusting and it's creepy. And the way that this CPS is set up now, along with the school system, because a lot of these people are retired school people. It's just, I'm glad you touched on the subject because I haven't seen it. I haven't seen anything really on it.
Mhm.
But them folk will come for you. They done took so many of my emails because of this on here. I can't get into my old. I got like 6 accounts on here because they kept locking me out. But why have the information on here if they gonna come for you? You know,
Right, right.
I don't get it. So somebody told you to go into it.
We was talking about, how many kids, with the kid with Kimani and Nazaya allegedly missing. Hey, Sister Ken. And it just takes you to that rabbit hole of check your areas for missing kids. See how many missing kids are in your area. And my subscriber Belinda was like, Miss Parker, you really should look at the Franklin um story, the Franklin conspiracy, the Franklin Credit Union. She's mentioned it several times. And thank you, James. I appreciate that. That's the name of the movie, Eyes Wide Shut. You guys go check out Eyes Wide Shut. And she kept saying that this is not,
Wow,
so she,
you're
finally I was
cutting
like,
out,
oh,
and I knew
can
that they
you,
would do that. You see that?
because a part of the screen went black, and I don't know if y'all noticed, and I was like, that's strange, why part of this went black, because it's never happened when I share screen. And yeah, it totally went black. And so I was like, I don't know if you, and I stopped it and said, I don't know if you guys noticed that the screen went black. I don't know if it doesn't want us to see certain things. And I said, I wonder if I watch this without you guys, will the screen go black? So and yeah, she's from Omaha, Nebraska. She said indeed. She said I'm blinked.
Wow. And just will you please write down that Lawrence King Jr. also?
The what is it?
His name is Lawrence King Jr. He was 15, but I think that was that top pervert's son.
And what did you she said it's blinking now. Wow.
He was taking the kids from all over. Remember when they ran away, they was coming from all over and being sent to Nebraska. In
So
that, but
King had a son
yes,
who was the one recruiting the children.
no, he just had a son because he was messing with them kids.
Mm,
And the boy was 15 when he was killed.
wow.
And I remember seeing that, like, because you don't see too many black Larry Kings,
Yeah.
and I was like, ugh. And in that book, he, they were in a helicopter, and he threw one out of the helicopter into some woods, So I believe that some of those Atlanta murders were also because of them, not just that Wayne guy.
Mm,
Because they was just throwing them out of helicopters, and that is just, it's crazy, you know,
wow.
how they had private jets just going from Nebraska to the White House. Wherever Ted Koppel was reporting, they would take them to go meet Ted Koppel. And
Mm,
I don't know if that man still do news, but he never got fired or anything. But he's one of them that was messing with them 15-year-old kids.
mm.
And probably younger. It doesn't shock me. It
And
just
you mentioned
baffles.
President Bush got away. What did
Yes,
you mean when you said that?
because that guy, Craig J. Spence, that I put in the chat, he was a CIA guy with him. He was doing the parties, and the parties were loaded with cameras so that the kids would be in the hotel rooms with George Bush. Larry King would bring them there. That's why he made all that money that he made. And he was supposed to have just like a regular salary from the
Thank you,
that
caller.
that credit union. But they stole them people's money. It was pretty much on the black people's dime because that was a black credit union.
Wow.
So they was just flying. But you got a blank check when it comes to that type of activity with George Bush and when they almost got caught up, they faked that shooting with Ronald Reagan.
Wow.
They're related somehow to the Bush thing. They just
Well,
was
she
trying to
definitely
take.
put his name. Tribal Levi just said Bush and Reagan.
Yeah, they was trying to take the focus off of because they found out that they was doing midnight tours at the White House.
Wow.
Why you got kids going in the White House at midnight? You know, so they think that that guy was either selling that story, but they murdered this guy named Craig J. Spence.
Craig J. Spitz. Hold
Yeah.
on. Craig
They
J.
trying to make it seem like he was crazy and he was sleeping on a park bench and
Mm.
they didn't even list him and they should have because he was the one taking people. But listen, they fired a guy in the White House, one of the security guys, because they said that they stole a plate.
What?
But he was the one walking them around the White House. So something's off and fishy about that. You know? They just wanted him out of there. But they said that he was stealing things from around the White House. But he was the one letting the kids in for those tours.
Wow.
But I just wish you, I hope they don't come for you like they did Miss Tamala, like they did me. You know, they'll come in the guise of, oh, we want to interview you, you know?
Wow.
And I was like, whoa, I didn't find out till years later that the United Way was a spy thing for them.
Wow.
I know. But I'm happy that you touched on that. And thank you for having me. And anything else you want to know, just I used to have this stuff written down and lo and behold, I don't have that stuff anymore.
I mean, you could tell you was deep in because the memory of it all. And top. I mean, Belinda, my sister that told me to talk about it. She's definitely down there confirming everything.
Mm-hmm.
She said she used to live on. Let me tell you where she used to live. She
Okay.
said when she was 16, she lived around the corner from the credit union, and she said she told me where she lived at. Jeez. I don't even see the comment no more. Let me stop. They don't want our smoke. This
All
is a
right.
deep wormhole. Yeah, it is. It's definitely a deep wormhole. Ryzen definitely came up here and confirmed a lot for us. Belinda's confirming everything you're talking about. This is a scary story, and it goes deep because of the politicians and, of course, the presidents involved. So, we know that it comes with this. We hear about the industry again and what comes with this, and I don't know why it goes over our head that it's not true, or we just turn a blind eye to what these rappers and actors and comedians say in the industry. But unfortunately, it happens. She said 33rd Franklin, the credit union, was on 34th Decatur.
Can I also add that our bills started going up really high? The electric started going up really high. Her house payment got up really high, and we ended up having to leave that. Excuse me. We ended up having to leave the house. And I just found that kind of strange that everything, the the sorry, our phone lines got crossed. My friend in California, she didn't even know that I had Buckeye Cable. And Buckeye, they would say Buckeye Cable while she was talking. The phone lines got crossed because they was, listening in on our phone calls.
Mm.
But she didn't have a solid clue that we had Buckeye Cable or Buckeye, telephone service until our lines got crossed.
How did you realize that, Rising?
Because she told me in California, and I'm like, how does she know? Because she said she kept hearing Buckeye, Buckeye. And that was our cable system. You know, they have to report this stuff to these people. If they tell them, hey, put a tap on that line, then that's what they got to do. But our lines got crossed, and she told me that, you know. And her name is Tammy Perry in California, and she didn't had brain surgery. She said she got to get it again. I wouldn't get it again. I don't trust these people.
Mm-mm.
Not after they
Mm-mm.
said I hacked into the United States Army, their computer system. She didn't. She just was doing research.
And you said even after the surgery, so Tammy is still researching this currently.
And she lost her house too. So just be careful and watch it because they just try to come at you in weird ways like that. You know, watch your car. Like we done lost vehicles. Like, dang, they will come for you. You know, they do it to Jaguar all the time. They freeze her assets and stuff like that. But she's way more open with that. You know,
Wow.
I
Do you
know.
think Tammy will be willing to come and talk to me?
Possibly. I'm not friends with her anymore, but you can reach out to her.
So you just kind of left her alone all because of everything that happened.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
that surgery kind of made her weird. I'm not gonna call her weird, but it just had her paranoid to where she just acted out of the ordinary. And I know that they had everything to do with that because it was like now you just think everybody's in the Illuminati, and she wasn't like that before.
Wow.
She still researches her kids research, but it's like I'm sure she would if you reached out to her. She's from Lodi, Lodi, California. I'm sure she would because we researched all this and they came for us.
Wow. I think I'm gonna leave Tammy where Tammy is. Jeez.
I
It's
know.
it's it's scary. It's crazy that these things have happened and boom, we're here. I
Yeah.
don't even want to see a message like that. You know what I'm saying? And it's crazy that no cap, are you okay? Because she was typing in the chat and then boom, my sister just no longer types. So I hope she's just cooking or got other things to do. Rising, welcome to the channel. I'm currently digging up these stories where they're trying to erase the history of things like this that happen because we want to know where these kids are. It's too many kids coming up missing, and the fact that they want us to she said might have went to school together. um oh, she's talking to somebody in the chat. It's funny how they want us to erase these vile things. I was just talking about the school in Canada, the Native Americans, and what they did to them children. And my God, you know um I didn't know.
Yeah.
I didn't know. And it's crazy how they want us to erase history so that the government and the government can look clean, squeaky clean, and a apology doesn't cover it. It
No.
doesn't cover it. And I'm like you want to get to the bottom of it, but dang, when you hear these kind of things, you're like, wait, what? You're wowed out, and it's just like, they try to shut us up for what, of what happened.
Yeah, and they're gonna, like I said, unfortunately, they're gonna start harassing you because of it. I know. I have to watch the replay because I missed so much of it. I was gone.
Cause I'm just listening, Belinda told us how deep it is, but I didn't know how deep it really was. I didn't know it was gonna lead us to the White House.
I,
Midnight tours with children in the
yeah,
White House.
yeah, they,
John, what's his name? Let me see. Johnny Goose
yeah,
underground.
yeah. I didn't know that he was going to see his mom.
Mm,
That was the first I heard in here.
wow. And the guy said, Paul Benashi said, he reached out to him in as early as 2018, and he said he's never gonna pop out due to the fact that he knows he's gonna end up like this list of people that I wrote down. I've I sit up here and I take notes when I do this, and she said, "Yeah, it's just a little shook up." I get it. No cap said she shook up.
He's
She
the only
said,
one that took
Tribe
$1 million
said
off
it
of.
leads to the royal family. Wow.
Yeah, he's the only one that took $1 million.
Wow.
And
They
he
said,
took that $1 million, and it's like from then on, we tell you what to say or you don't say anything at all.
wow.
And I didn't hear nothing from him. I didn't even know he did that other interview, but please believe that he should have been in jail too. He was recruiting them.
That's crazy.
And
That
you
is.
have $1 million?
Mm,
Uh-uh.
mm, mm. Dang, Rising. And they said they don't even know. This is crazy. I'm like you said, it goes deep down the rabbit hole.
It does. And when they were supposed to air that on public service broadcast, it never even aired.
That's what it said. That's what they said. How did it make it to YouTube?
How did it make it on there?
How did it make it to YouTube, but not the
Um,
Discovery Channel?
I never even watched it. I was scared to watch it.
Wow.
But somebody leaked it on there.
I see.
Same with that book. And the guy who went after them. I don't really hear from these people anymore. You know.
And the fact that
But
everybody ended up unalive, that speaks volumes. We got Gary Kerdori, Andrew Kerdori, Sean Boner, Claire Howard, William
and let
Colby.
me say this, please. When he said that guy got thrown from like a hotel, the same thing happened with Bill Clinton's baby mama. They threw her from a second story and broke her ankle. You know, I don't
I've
know.
never heard that story. So what came? What do you? So what? So what happened to his wife? Because I've never heard of it.
She's not a wife. She was like a prostitute that Bill Clinton would um, party with in Little Rock, Arkansas. And the black prostitute ended up having his baby, and they threw her off a two-story and she broke her ankle. And they made her quit saying that, that was his son. But the son is grown now. He like 30 some years old. His
Wow.
name is Danny
And I
Lee.
do think I remember something about hearing about a legitimate son with Bill Clinton. Like, yes, when the Monica Lewinsky story had transpired, I do remember something about an illegitimate child with Bill Clinton. And wow. So the woman survived, and that was to shut her up.
Yeah, they threw her off, and that's what they do. They will throw you. They will make you look like you did a suicide and you didn't. That Owen boy and the Boner boy, both of them didn't commit suicide.
Mm-hmm.
That dude was in the hospital when the Troy one was in the hospital. I didn't know that happened with Sean, but I knew that they was doing that to their siblings. But they were saying, "Oh, your sibling committed suicide." How both of them?
Yeah.
They do that, and it's so crazy. But they still messing with people, but they're doing it in a media sort of way now. Just like remember when I said Nick Cannon, the lady was talking about Kanika, and next thing you know, they're flying them to Hawaii, saying that they're giving them a record deal. And that just took the focus off of her talking about Kanika, because she ain't talk about Kanika since.
Wow.
He's got something called Nick. What is that called? I forget. But Nick Cannon, he recruits children, to be little rappers and in this group. I forgot what it's called, but it's called something with his name. Incredible. It's some. Some weird stuff.
Wow. I never even knew that.
Because she was really talking about Kanika a lot. And then people ended up dead, like Zach TV1 died because of the Kanika case.
Yes. And if that didn't speak volumes to the chat about the higher ups, because you got to think, why did he get unalived? By researching the story of a young black girl walking in a hotel and boom, she's unalived.
And he was on live saying that these mysterious people are reaching out to him, telling him to stop talking about it. You know? And she lost her job because of talking about it. And it's like, how? We're just talking about something that happened and nobody knows what happened with it. Incredible with the N.
She said,
Incredible.
she was saying, Tribe said not too many of the black kids are mentioned.
No, not at all. They didn't mention the Larry King Jr. You know, I had to find this out because I was researching it, and they said he was a 15-year-old openly gay, like his father, little boy, and they didn't want him alive anymore, and it's sad. They didn't care nothing about them kids.
She said, see, you and your friend went deep into the elite.
Yeah, because it would take. You said you was looking for the kids. A lot of the kids went to Area 51 and got their memory wiped out. So they don't know what happened to them. But they
Yeah,
was
because they said the kids recanted their stories. They was talking about it, and then they kind of just recanted their stories, and it's like they couldn't remember anything they said. So I'm gonna be live later. Rising, how long do you stay up? How late do you stay up? You probably don't stay up late.
Till about 3:30.
Okay. If you don't mind pulling up later on, I'm gonna do a live, and he's not a racist. Hillary will do anything to cover it up. I'm gonna be going live later about the school, Oprah, what really happened at Oprah school. Why did it, why did that get swept under the rug? And things, and it kind of leads into things like this, because if you really do your history about up there, it's a lot of sex trafficking and things like that happening. And it was funny to me how she just moved to school all the way to Africa, not helping the communities here in America.
And it keeps the audio keeps cutting in and out too. So expect that to happen a lot while you're doing this.
I see. I'm gonna go on and end this because Shankrock will be going live, you guys. Rising, I hope to see you later on. Thank you so much. It's been an honor having you up here to put some clarity on this. For anybody that's gonna research it or trying to research it, what to look forward to and things like that. So I appreciate you so much for this. And you're always welcome to hit the panel. If you have a thought, pull up. I'll drop the link anytime for you, love. And welcome to the Riders family. I appreciate you so much.
Thank you for having me. And I wasn't even subscribed, so I just happened to see it. But I'm gonna subscribe now.
All right. Thank you.
You're
Thank you.
welcome.
I appreciate you. Man, y'all thank Rising for coming in, along with Belinda for sharing his story, what happened in her community. Okay, a lot of black boys was turned into pimps and sent into other states to set up camps like massage parlors. See you all later. Wow. Man, you guys, we're gonna be here late tonight. I hope to see Rising again. And many more of y'all to share your thoughts and pull up what really happened at the Oprah school and so many other stories. We're not gonna just stay focused on that. It's other stories that I want to cover. Let me see. Okay. All right. Think I got some stuff wrote down to cover along with this. Funny how they all get silenced. That's what she said. You got to do the replay, Latif. This was deep. This was deep. This was pretty deep. Hey, boo. All right. Like Desmona's Detroit, Oklahoma. Look how you said Ohio. See how Ohio keeps popping up? Whew. You guys, if you haven't caught up, catch the replay. I will catch you guys later. I hope to see each and every one of you guys back with me for our late night live. No cap, praying for you too. I appreciate Kimberly for dropping that prayer in the chat, but we do have to be mindful of doing stories like this. It's funny how she said, I didn't know nothing about you. I just seen this. And the stuff she just shared is super spooky. No cap is shook. She got a message after kind of looking into it just from me posting a live, and I get it. You guys make sure you pull up to Shank Rock in 30 minutes, and please y'all be careful going deep. Please, y'all, prayers for y'all. I see. Belinda, I see. This was deeper than I thought. Just when I thought we couldn't go deep, this was deeper than I thought. Okay, Colton. Okay, love. I will see you guys at Shank Rocks. You guys get refreshed because we're gonna be here for a while tonight. I hope Latif pulls up. I hope Horizon pulls up again as well. I'm good on this one, too scary. Okay, Zilla. Absolutely. Absolutely. When I just thought the Canada story was wild and wicked, Belinda. It was. Belinda. Even though we need to know these things. We do. It's scary, but we just do. It's unfortunate, but all these children missing, unalive, satanic acts, politicians, police officers, judges. Child, Phoenix. Think I want to cross some barriers, love. She said, I'm so glad I'm not alone about all this. Who, Foxy? I'll see you guys in a minute over in Shank Rocks. I appreciate each and every one of you guys for pouring into my channel with donations and also hitting that like button and just I'm gonna leave the lights on tonight. I'm leaving it all on. He said, Foxy, you're not no, Alicia, don't. What did Alicia say? Alicia? She said, no, Alicia, don't. They don't got no cap. My baby scared. She said, don't do it. Just want y'all to catch on to the patterns and connections of the school, agencies, judges. Hey, Lisa. Yeah. Don't forget that bush. Oh, Lord. Oh. I'll see you guys in just a minute at Shank Rocks, guys. Yeah, Alicia, I'd say don't do it. She said, I'm not sleeping. Y'all, look. I'm up tonight. Y'all hear me? When I say I might be here until 7, 8 o'clock, you hear me? I'm up tonight. And it was the glitching for me. And it was the screen going black. It was a lie. This was a lie. And as soon as she came, you guys noticed I hadn't glitched a bit. Latif, I hadn't glitched one bit doing this live playing it. And all of a sudden the screen goes black for certain parts of the live of the Franklin conspiracy, right? Boom, it pops back in as if nothing happened. And I'm going to go watch it for myself just to see if it did it. And then boom, she hits the panel and starts going deep. And guess what, Latif? We started glitching. It was still 5 a.m. this morning. He said, be aware. Yeah. She said, don't do any research. Glitches, but come on. Kimberly, y'all know I was up here fine. Never glitched. She said you gotta be careful the alphabet boys. It's funny you said that because she told me that too. Salute everybody. I'll see you guys at Shank Rocks, and I'll see you guys. Lord, I love awareness, but baby, I'm too little for this one. Zilla, not just you, me too. Me too. Y'all, I'm shooketh. I've never said anything like that, but guess what, you guys? I am shooketh, okay? I will see you guys at Shank Rocks, and I will see you guys back here tonight because we're going to be up. I know I am. Yes, she's being watched. She went too deep. Pray for her covering. And her friends scared me. You're welcome, Rise, and I hope to see you later on, my love. They want us to be scared, and I won't. King, I'll call you in just a second, okay? Thanks, you guys. I'll see you guys at Shank Rocks, okay?